I love it. And you're at a standing desk.
Yes, I am. Actually, it's one of those desks that goes up and down.
Yeah. Is it autonomous?
No, I wish. It's automatic. If it was
Okay.
autonomous.
No. Autonomous is the name of the company.
No, actually, I've had this one for a while, so I don't really remember. It's called the walking company or the sitting company, or I forget what it was called, but something to do with walking or sitting. But
yeah, no, there's a company called Autonomous that does the desks and stuff like that. And chairs.
Really?
Yep.
I actually would love an autonomous desk, so it could detect, when I need to sit down and when I need to stand up, so that, as I walk up to it, or I'm sitting here working away and I'm sitting, and then all of a sudden it starts going up. So that,
and then you stand up. Yep.
Reminding me time to stand up, instead of my watch just going, time to stand.
Exactly, right? So it's interesting that you say that, because we look at the devices we have right now as reminders and things like that. But that's actually not how we work as human beings.
Yeah.
We actually need something else to propel us, or, like you said, the desk automatically starts getting up because it knows you've been sitting for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. It starts going up and you just do it, right? You're not thinking about it. You're not having to make the action. It's forcing you to make the action. Versus, reminder, you need to drink water. Okay, that doesn't help me actually drink water. I mean, not that I'm gonna have a,
Thanks for reminding me.
Right, I know, right here, right? Let me drink some water.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, I think what's happening is that we're surrounded by so many reminders. And these things, even though they have the ability to sort of force us to do things, because, as humans, we forget a lot. They're not quite there yet. So I think that's what we need to do next, right? We need to get these devices to have enough intelligence so that they can help us be better at what we want to do.
We do. Interestingly enough, I had found a co-founder, and this is about, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, but we were looking at that from a clothing perspective. We were thinking long-term. I mean, granted, you have to start somewhere, but long-term, the vision was that clothes would enhance your life.
Right.
In the sense that if it tells you that you need to drink water, it's telling you because you're getting to the point of dehydration. And if you get dehydrated, it kind of, somehow there would be ways for it to tell you why it's telling you to drink water and what the effects would be 5-6 hours down the line.
Right.
That therefore then it creates a habit for you. Then the habit sticks, right? We also know that a lot of these reminders are just things for habits.
Yeah.
And habits cannot be created by reminders. Habits have to be created by doing and understanding why we're doing it and how it affects us, not for the moment, but the marshmallow test, right? You get a marshmallow right now and you don't eat it, or if you eat it, you won't get a second one. But if you keep the marshmallow and you wait for 5 minutes, you'll get a second marshmallow. Right?
That's
and
right.
this is done with kids. Actually, I think it's a Stanford study, right? So right here in
California. I'm not sure if it's a Stanford study, but yeah, I remember that. But
right?
Remember the power of habit, right? Remember Charles Duhigg, he wrote, all of our habits are sort of ingrained into our dinosaur brain at the lowest level. So we always have to kind of overlay them with other habits. Otherwise, they just keep coming back up again.
Right, exactly, right? They're conscious choices. But yeah, anyway. Hi.
Hey, hi. Let's just go right into it. Why not? So I'm actually, this is an experiment for me. Normally I have my headset on when I'm doing this, but I actually figured out how to get my microphone to work properly. So this is the first time I'm actually doing it free of headset. So
that's awesome. I know I've noticed that most people that do these do put headsets on.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered about that, because I'm like, why?
So you can hear yourself, right? That's like the radio station thing. It's like, I'm here, I'm listening to what I sound like, but I'm not that. I don't want to do that. I'm not that much of a professional, even though I used to be a real. I used to have a podcast that I did for an incredibly long period of time. I had 900 plus episodes, and I got really into it, and all the sound, this and that, and blah blah blah. And now we're like, this was like 10 years ago, and now times have changed so much that we can just easily We have software that makes your voice sound good. It's all,
it's all
you
there.
don't have to have the super amazing mic and the super amazing headphones and the super amazing studio and all of that stuff, because there are electronic ways of getting around that.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of goes to a topic that's interesting as content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially our generation, Gen X and Boomers, we're used to good quality content. And if somebody doesn't create good quality content, even us, we feel like, well, what are they doing? But the fact of the matter is, even for me coming from that corporate world, but being such a free spirit, I really can appreciate someone creating something and putting it out there. And I've gotten to a point where I look at stuff and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And it's not that it's like this high production value thing. And so I sometimes look at myself and say to myself, well, why do I feel like I'm always having to create high production value? And actually, I have a story in the sense that I've recorded a course that I want to do for corporations or for individuals, but that could be a course that corporate executives take in real life. But I wanted to do a recording first so people could kind of understand what it was all about. And to be honest with you, I've got the team to record it, all that kind of stuff. And the content's there too. And it's not me.
Oh, no.
And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if I want to, the content's there, the production value is great, but I'm just sitting and watching myself and I'm like, oh my God, even I wouldn't watch myself, because it's about me. And I'm like, I can just re-record it. But the thing is, I'm going to have to pay that same amount of money to re-record it. And part of me is, and then our older one made a video the other day. And it was just images and put the music and all this. And he's 13. And I'm like, whoa, wait, you did all this on your own? I'm like, wait, you know what? You can record me. I'm going to do a pre-video to all these videos and say, guess what? That was full production value. This is me. And you're going to have to deal with it for a little bit. And I'll come and say hi once in a while.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. Because the high production value stuff, I think people aren't that interested in it anymore. I mean, look at somebody like Joe Rogan, right? He's just got a mic in a room and, everything's visible, nothing's hidden. You can see everything going on. And the guy's like super popular. So it's the same with this kind of thing. It's like, let's leverage the technology to just be spontaneous.
Exactly. Well, the human part, right? That's who we are as humans. So why are we trying to dress it up? Not that we're pigs, but why are we trying to dress it up?
Well, it's all about putting up a facade, right? Because we're all before all of this started to happen with push authenticity, is that we all had to have our facades up, right? It's like, here's my work facade and here's my school facade, my it's like the George Costanza worlds colliding kind of thing, where of course who knows who's going to get that reference, right? It have to be
right. There might be quite a few people that don't, but I did get it, so it's okay.
That's the thing, right? Is that I think less and less of us have got that. Although it's kind of balancing out, because people are using filters and they want to improve themselves so that they look better. Our personas, or who we are to the world now, is our online persona, right? And we could either be beautifully filtered, or we could just be real. And I think kind of like it, people would like both sides, really. I mean,
they do. Well, and then so there's something to say for, like, okay, LinkedIn, right? My LinkedIn professional, my picture is a professional photographer that did it about 4 years ago. But even I'm starting to look at it and I love the picture and it is really me, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's not quite me anymore, right? So I need to do a new picture. But then I see people putting very casual social pictures, and even I'm like, that's not LinkedIn.
Yeah.
At least put a picture that, sure, you can show your real self. You can even be in casual clothes or whatever, but that look on your face should, I don't know. It's not a dating site.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're going to put a picture like that is very much a dating, and it's just about, it's not me judging, it's just, if I'm perceiving it that way, and it's more females who do this than males, but if I'm somebody who's non-judgmental is perceiving that, then guess what? The rest of the world's not even thinking twice.
Yeah.
I'm thinking twice because I'm all about people. I'm all about what am I perceiving from what I'm seeing? You know, I'm consciously thinking about it. So I'm almost trying to say it from a perspective. If you want the right people to come to you, then you've got to put what the right perception in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, they're not going to.
Do you remember The New Adventures of Christine? That show? It was the same actress who played Elaine Bennis in, and she's also in Veep. I forget her name. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, right?
Okay.
So she was in this show that I used to watch. It was a long time ago, and they had this one episode where they were talking about the differences between sort of like looks and intelligence, and you know, and they were doing this whole riff about how they're basically the opposite of what you'd normally say, like, oh, you know, it's how intelligent you are, not how you look, and stuff like that. Yeah. And she started going on this rant about, you know, it's what's on the outside that counts. And I thought to myself, that's exactly right. I mean, from an initial impression from what's on the outside, this counts. And, you know, human beings, being the creatures that we are, we haven't really evolved from the savannah. We make snap judgments based on, you know, a couple seconds of,
right?
Exactly, a couple seconds, and it's like instant likability or instant annoyance or hatred or whatever. It's just like
whatever
boom.
It may be. Yeah, I mean,
so and then our thinking brains have got to kick in and go, should I have really thought like that about this person?
Right. But it's funny you say that, Chris, because most you say that, but most people are not even going that far.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm an executive coach. My persona, my who I am is immediately to engage with people, right? And even I go through that 30 seconds of what am I perceiving, right? But after that 30 seconds, I go into my mode of I'm just going to engage. I'm a human being. I'm going to put myself out there so that that person gets to know me, because I know they may be perceiving whatever they want to perceive about me, and I quickly want to change that thought.
Right.
You know, because I've actually had people, I mean, older white males, I've actually had an older white males come and actually have those conversations where they say, well, we're going to have nothing in common. And guess who's still talking to me 2.5 hours later?
Right.
And it's like, seriously?
You know, it's all about the cognitive piece, not just the visual piece, right?
Exactly. You know, I've been called an old white man by some of my friends. They're like, right now, you really sound like an older white man. And I'm like,
well, on the internet, you know, you can be a dog, right? Wasn't that a cartoon? I remember a cartoon. Anyway, but yeah. So as an executive coach, what do you think? Where do you think we're going? You think we're going towards more authenticity, or we're leaning more towards, you know, putting up beautiful facade?
That's a great question, actually. I think it's generational. I think boomers and Gen Xers are learning to be more authentic. But part of that is they haven't even, a lot of them are just starting to go through even the self-awareness. They're not aware of what they actually want in this new world order.
Right.
What they were doing was the path, and they were supposed to do certain things, and they were doing them, and they lived it, and the family life was that way, and the work life was that way, and these two personas or multiple personas. And then we have this generation of millennials coming in, and they're like, from day one, they're like, well, I care about social responsibility. I care about my relationships. I care about what matters to me. No, I'm not this 21-year-old that doesn't know anything. You know, I actually have value to give, and I'm going to speak my mind. And boomers and Gen Xers were like, whoa, you haven't been around long enough.
Yeah, you don't know anything.
You don't know anything. But the fact of the matter is, and somebody told this story about a week ago, millennials grew up with what I'm defining as a lot more violence. 9/11, you know, most of them, I think they were like 10 to 15 years old. Gun violence, you know, in their schools, like right then and there. I mean, they're growing up with it. I mean, schools that have, what do you call it, the metal detectors and stuff. I mean, are you kidding me? Okay, look, Gen X, we were latchkey kids. both our parents worked. We did everything on our own. We had to work hard, blah, blah, okay. So we had our own things, but what they went through actually has affected that generation psychologically and emotionally, which is why they have FOMO.
Right.
Fear of missing out.
I don't know. I mean, I get FOMO a lot too, especially looking at all the books behind me that I have yet to read.
Mine are all my Kindle, so I guess whenever I open my Kindle, I see.
You know, I used to have a library full of books I've read. Now I have a library full of books I
You
haven't
read.
read.
Yep.
When it's like, so there's just too much to insert into here, and I don't have enough time to insert it. So
right. And no, I understand. I mean, and there's some amazing books that are coming out. People are continuing to, I mean, if you go look at it from a book perspective, people are becoming more authentic. People are saying we need to be more authentic, but I actually feel like they're telling that story to the boomers and Gen Xers. And then I would say on the flip side, when we talk about the authenticity from like a millennial perspective, a lot of it's social media. I think they're actually a little bit more real life. But then there's a huge group of them that are creating these different personas online because that's what they want.
yeah.
And so then you have the filters and, all that kind of stuff. And I'm making generalizations, right? But I will say there's a little bit of a gap between, is it either just authentic or is it either just, the facades? And I think we're coming to a middle ground through the generations, but it's very different when it comes generationally.
So do you think that an executive nowadays should have TikTok or should be on all these social media platforms?
No, I actually have never believed that executive needs to be on every platform. If anything, as much as I used to be a first adopter for a lot of technology, because I came from marketing, right? So in the marketing world, when Twitter launched, as a marketer, I should have been on it. It took me about 3 years to go on it. And here's the reason why. Not because I was worried about new technology or whatever. I just fundamentally never believed in it. I didn't believe in it, and I still don't believe in it. If I think that stats were to be there, I mean, most of Twitter now is just bots and putting out information. It's like nobody's really. I mean, there are people who read it, which I don't understand. But I'm like, an executive is not going to have the time to sit and read through 1,000 tweets that have come out by different people. When, by the way, there's still a lot of traditional media that will give you the headlines and what's going on and all that kind of stuff. I know that, I mean, if anything, I look at Twitter, I think in the past, and I can't think of the examples, but I think Twitter has been amazing in situations where people didn't have access to certain stuff and they were able to connect with each other on Twitter to be able to speak about something and take a situation and help a situation because they were able to collectively get tons of people on it.
Right.
But as a media, I'm like, no. I mean, I get that everybody has it and every company's supposed to have it, but I really don't care for it.
Yeah.
And part of me, for my executive coaching, I mean, I think I created an account, but I've never put anything on it.
Okay, so let's go back to sort of executive coaching, right? So is that your key thing now? That's that what you're doing today, or
yes?
So I'm the span of the stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, so I have my own executive coaching practice. I moved out to Silicon Valley about 1.5 years ago. So originally moved out here for a full-time role, but then realized that after leaving the corporate world 3 times, I'm ready to finally leave and focus mostly on executive coaching. I say mostly because I'm also expanding into executive recruiting. And so I'm co-founding a company with some co-founders. The reason it's a startup, so it is technology based versus my practice is more of a service based company. But we want to disrupt executive recruiting with the use of technology. Going back to our early conversation about authenticity, right? So how do companies create job descriptions as they're going through the interviewing process at an executive level that gives more insights into the culture, the organization, the team, the ways of working, right? Things that for an executive really makes a lot of difference in whether they join a company or not, without going through the entire interview process. that also then on the flip side, technology allows the candidate to be able to describe themselves from a cultural mindset, ways of working perspective, so that as executive recruiters are looking for matches, we're finding more real matches without going through 6 interviews before you actually decide, oh wait, this is not a match at all, right? Because on the surface, it may look like matches, but then when you get and bring in the psychometrics, the human element, the dynamics of both the individual and the company and all those different things, there could be gaps, right? And that's one example. So that's one example of doing it, educating people on being able to get companies to become more direct with what they're looking for, getting candidates to understand the language of how do you describe yourself, and then all kinds of other things on a platform. So we're creating a long-term platform to kind of change executive recruiting to bring in the right candidates. Underlying message, i.e. a little bit more diversity, not just demographic, but also cognitive diversity at the earlier stages of this whole process of people looking for jobs and companies looking for candidates.
So could you say it's like an eHarmony of executive recruiting, where you have a much more deeper dive into the data on both sides and the matching algorithms, or the matching, it's an optimal matching platform for between candidates and jobs?
Yeah, and that's one component of it. Definitely matching. I don't know if I want to be compared to eHarmony.
Just think of it,
but yeah, you're right. Or more like a, more like an, I guess, OkCupid that actually does have a lot more algorithms, right? Based on what matters to you. And I say that because OkCupid is more, here's the question, and they're very poignant questions, right? And how important is this to you? And how important is it to what the other person answers also, right? Because if there are topics that are important to you, but it doesn't matter to the other person and you don't care what the other person answers, they're still matching. Versus something is important to you and you feel one way, and something is important to the other person and they feel the other way, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But yeah, we are trying to create a large platform to also bring in candidates that may already not be in any of the executive recruiting databases, right? Because not every, executive out there has used executive recruiters before. And so companies may be missing out on potential candidates just because they're not in a recruiter database, just because they don't have the traditional experience, just because, they don't know the mindset, but yet this person could be right for their business, right? So we're trying to bring all those pieces together through technology to kind of disrupt executive recruiting.
No, that reminds me of a book I just finished reading called Quality Land, and it's set in the near future, where there's this company called Quality Partner that will automatically determine whether or not the person that you're with is the best person for you to be with, and will send you notifications saying, hey, we see your relationship suboptimal. Here's like 5 other people you probably should be going out with. Maybe you should do that.
Wow.
And it does it by reviewing everybody's, preferences and social media. And, since we have devices all around us listening to everything, it can tell if there's strife in the relationship and stuff like that.
Wow.
And one of the protagonists actually lost his partner because she said, oh, I could do better, because Quality Partner said, here's 5 people who are better than you.
Wow.
So I'm going to leave you. I'm going to go to these other people. So it's a little bit of a dystopian envisioning of the future. But I mean, who knows? We're probably going to get to that point. So is this going to be like, I'm sitting here, I'm doing my job, I'm happy, I'm well compensated, and then all of a sudden I'll get an email saying, hey, there's another job at this other company and they really need you and you're way more of a match than you are here. You should go.
I hear what you're saying. I think
actually, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because maybe there's if it's a better match.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe from a relationship perspective, it's not so good, but from a sort of corporate company perspective, I mean, I think both the employer and the employee want to be in the right roles, right?
Exactly.
If there's a mismatch there, someone's going to be unhappy.
Absolutely. No, I think there's definitely potential for that. We'd also have to look at the unintended consequences of that, right? But I think definitely, I think it starts helping what I was talking about before. A lot of what the work I do is actually helping people through self-awareness. That's the first step of what I go through with them through the executive coaching, because that helps them define themselves. It doesn't necessarily tell them what they want, it just helps them define themselves and articulate themselves.
Right.
So yes, when we come to the executive recruiting, absolutely, there's no reason why the potential is not there for us to be able to tell people, hey, you've got skill sets that match out here. Maybe you're interested in that. Because that's the other part of it, anonymity, right? Anonymity for a company to say, I want to go out there and search for people without putting a job out there. And part of the, question comes up is like, why would a company be anonymous? But the thing is, if we look at business and business results today, the right people do search to find out what kind of jobs companies are posting at executive levels to understand where they're going with their business.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's actually a well-known fact in business circles, but a lot of people may not think about it,
Mm-hmm.
And then from a candidate perspective, well, if I'm at another company or whatever, and I'm a leader, I do, from a values perspective, you need to be the leader as long as you're in a company, right? That is your role. And if you do not agree with stuff, then it is your role to walk away. But until you do, you have to be a leader, right? And so for them, it's very hard for them to say, oh yeah, I'm looking, because usually the world's, again, very small,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody will come to know. And that's not how you want it to happen.
Right. Well, here's a question for you. So I wrote a while back through a bunch of different blog posts that since 2008, the Great Recession has changed our relationship with the employer-employee relationship. That there used to be a lot more loyalty between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since 2008, it seems like both corporations and employees have said, this loyalty bound is broken.
Yeah.
And, employees are a lot more mercenary, companies are a lot more mercenary. And do you feel the same way? And if that's the case, this is actually a really good application for this kind of world, because it's kind of like, okay, I'm looking out for myself because I know my company is not really looking out for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably best if I have a lot of irons in the fire just in case something were to happen. Are you seeing that too?
What I am seeing is a deterioration of trust, which is what you're talking about. People feel like, I need to know what else is out there. I need to be connected, which in some ways helps the company also, even if you're there, because it makes sure that your people are looking outward instead of only inward, right? Part of the reason loyalty was created before also is people didn't know what else was going on.
Right.
If you don't know what else is going on, you're like, okay, I'm getting paid well, and okay, this is the way it's supposed to be, right? We didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
Things are being built a lot faster. Technology is changing how we work. Again, it's more for Gen X and boomers, especially who are already in executive levels, and they're starting to worry that that next generation's coming up pretty fast, or the next generation is just building their own stuff. Well, they're building their own stuff, which creates different paradigm shifts.
Right.
So can we change that? It's going to take some time. I think it's going to take time for that trust to be rebuilt, because Gen X and boomers have a long way to go in terms of building trust. We trust a very small group of people, but to trust the system, it's a much larger kind of topic, I guess you could say.
Right. So on that topic, where we're talking about Gen X and boomers are starting to get older, and I don't really know that many Gen X and boomers who are still employed at a traditional company, right? It's kind of like they got to, some certain age, 40, 45 or something like that. And all of a sudden they found themselves out in the job market. And unless they have super specialized skills in a particular area, they're like floundering, looking for work, and they always fall into consulting. And when they fall into consulting, they actually do okay, because it's kind of like companies expect you to be a consultant when you pass a certain experience level.
Yep.
But prior to that, they prefer you to be an employee. And I think, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a great insight. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I actually do know a lot of Gen Xers and Boomers who are also still working, but I also
Mhm.
know a lot of them who are doing startups. I know a lot of them who are consultants, right? And then that just becomes the ways of working. I do know that those who are consultants feel a little bit more like salespeople in the sense that they're not quite sure what that income coming in is going to be. So they still have a lot of stress on their shoulders.
Mhm.
Um, and it is very interesting that companies well, let me say it this way. Old school corporations have that expectation. Because if you look at startups or even Silicon Valley companies, they're actually trying to hire right out of school or the
Mhm.
younger folks. Even the
Yep.
people that they're trying to bring in later, they're like, well, sure, you have 20 years of startup experience, but you've never led a large team. And sorry, we can't bring you into Facebook
Right.
or
Right.
Google or LinkedIn or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but I have 20 years of experience. I mean, I know folks who have gone through this experience and they're just like, this is so weird. I've got startup experience, I've got Silicon Valley experience, I have the experience to do the job. Yes, I had a startup team that I built from 1 to 20, but okay, this is going to be, I don't know, 40, 50 person team, and you're saying that's the one reason you're not going to hire me.
Right. That makes no sense.
That
It makes
makes
no sense
no
because
sense.
the skills that you've built are
Right.
totally applicable to
So
that role.
experience is becoming a um, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Experience is becoming a hindrance to finding jobs for those who are boomers and Gen Xers in the newer worlds, but in the old corporate world, there's not enough executive roles.
Mm.
Right. And then people at a certain level are starting to feel pressure that, wait, I'm not being able to go up the ladder or whatever. And then I think that's the dynamic that's making them become consultants.
Right. It's interesting that you say up the ladder because is there still a ladder? I mean,
I think so.
that's what we all thought. We all thought that's what we all thought when we were growing up. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, it's like, okay, get the job, this job, and then just make your way up to the corner office.
Yep.
And it's like, wait a minute,
Wait a minute.
that was then. This
Yep.
is now. Is there still a ladder?
I think in many traditional corporations there is. I think we focus a lot in the media on your traditional top corporations and and the new gen, top corporations, because they're corporations too. I mean, Facebooks and LinkedIn's and all that, they're still corporations. I'm sorry, you have more than 4 people now. You're a corporation.
Oh yeah, for sure. And sometimes
But
people lump them in with startups, and I'm like, no.
no. I'm sorry, they're corporations.
Old.
So when we look at it from that perspective, we look at how many businesses and companies there still are. Yeah, there's a lot of company. I mean, there may not be the glamorous companies, but there's still a lot of companies with that corporate hierarchy. There hasn't been a shift quite yet to get moving more to what is the right word? Is it oligarch? Oligarchy? No, I'm saying it wrong, so I'm not even going to say it. But there are other models out there or let's take, for example, the Zappos model, right? Zappos model wasn't hierarchical. It was you managed your projects, through to finish, and there wasn't much of a hierarchy, right? But how do you get 2 generations to first understand that and understand that they can still be successful? And success also, so I'm going to another topic, but success is not defined anymore as just your individual success.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That success has to be collective for a company to be successful. And therefore we're changing, again, that next generation is kind of changing that. You're not going to be top dog all the time, and top dog is not necessarily what we define as being the most successful.
Right, because a typical old school corporation, you go up the
You
ranks.
go up the ladder, you
People
get some
working underneath
titles.
you, and then it
Yep.
go on, and eventually you get to the corner office.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what's incentivized, right? It's
Mhm.
incentivized for you to continue going up the ranks. But in these new organizations, going up the ranks is not incentivized. In fact, you don't want to incentivize that because they're going to be spending their time working on that as opposed to,
Maybe the
developing
work.
new stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I don't think that paradigm shift has happened yet. Maybe so in newer companies and newer startups and things like that, but yeah, that's still a ways away.
Okay, so when you're talking to people who are in those startup companies, where are they going? I mean, where do they want to go? What's success for them?
Hmm. So interestingly enough, so our target for executive recruiting actually is startups. And it's getting to, so instead of trying to totally change the language for a corporation, right, we're starting with startups who are kind of new to the game, so to say. But as they get their Series A, Series B, they need executives, right? They need
Right.
the right executives that can come in and help them grow and build and scale. What's very interesting is that not all founders are necessarily the best CEOs, right?
That's true. I've seen
And
that.
so sometimes founders need to step away and new people come in as CEOs, but they're not the original founders. So unless the founder has created a real strong culture, they're not necessarily hiring somebody that may match with the culture of that founder. But then part of it sometimes, the flip side of the coin is sometimes the founder is taken out because they don't have the culture to create scale.
Right.
So going back to your question, what do startups want? It depends on who you're talking to. If it's the investors and the new leadership team and stuff, they want success, and it becomes just like any other corporation where you got to work and slog and make sure you make your metrics and make sure you make your numbers. And oh yeah, we'll have a little bit of conversation about culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh sure, we'll put an executive coach in place, but executive coach is there more to just talk with people, not necessarily building that culture, right? And so in some ways it's the same trap. Just because that new generation is coming in and they think about things differently doesn't mean they're really doing anything differently.
Right.
And
Right.
startups, by the way, I should also, step back for a second. Startups aren't just 20-year-olds. Actually, in Silicon Valley, I think there's a lot more people that instead of going the consulting route are saying, you know what, we're going to do a startup,
Yep. That's true.
right?
Especially
And
right here, everyone's doing
maybe,
startup. You
yeah,
just sit in the fills for 5 minutes, and like everybody around you is talking about how they're going to build this amazing startup that's going
right.
to revolutionize everything, which is great.
Exactly.
I love.
We're talking about that too, right? So, I have my executive coaching practice, which is very much service oriented, but I'm also thinking about the startup. But to me, they're both laddering in very, very well, right? Because if we were to create a platform, there has to be that human element perspective. What is actually happening? What is going through people's minds? What is motivating the candidates? What does the company really care for? So going back to your question, what are the startups doing? That's something hopefully we're thinking we can help grow it and mold it at the same time, as we talk about these things, because part of it is it's very hard to change something that's already there, but once we can start the movement, it can then grow from there.
So let's talk a little bit about the future, because that's me. I'm a future guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
same here.
so let's talk about
I'm a
a little
future
bit
gal though.
about the future of work. So I do some work with the IFTF Institute for the Future, and they were talking about the future of work being a lot like where Uber seems to be going. And it's you've
Okay.
got a bunch of workers at the bottom, you've got these algorithms in between that are doing the middle management, and
Mm-hmm.
then you've got senior management up here, and then maybe you have like a little cadre of wizards who are the software developers
Mm-hmm.
who build the algorithms. But the
Mm-hmm.
middle management layer is gone,
Gone.
right? And that's what they're saying the future of work might end up being, because they're seeing that starting to happen with Uber
Mm-hmm.
and some of the companies, Airbnb, et cetera. Do you see that happening across the board everywhere, or do you think that's just sort of like a specific areas?
Interesting. I haven't necessarily seen it per se, but if I were to look at the future, we're definitely going towards those algorithms, the bots, the RPA, right? And I think we're going to get comfortable with that. However, I also am of the ilk of, I do not believe technology is taking away jobs. I'm of the ilk that I believe that people need to be upskilled and retrained. And I was talking about that in 2017, probably before that, but I actually wrote about it in 2017 on a blog. Mm. And people are finally doing it, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of companies create organizations that they're retraining their employees because it creates the loyalty and all that kind of stuff. And so another thought that has come up in the last couple of weeks is that if we have that middle management become the technology, we're actually freeing up our minds to do bigger and better things and create bigger and better things. And so maybe the setup is that way, but I think we're going to go from a finite number of companies to almost, it's just going to explode. Yep. It's going to explode because technology is being able to do some of the mundane, rote things that unfortunately middle management has to do right now as a human being, right? That can be codified and that can be created through technology. And human beings, if they are able to be reskilled and uptrained and, you know, all those kind of things, we'll start using our creative brain a little bit more and creating even more things that continue to ladder into this way of working. Yep. And then keep enhancing our life and keep, you know, just changing the world we see as it is today.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get a lot of heat sometimes because I say automation is a good thing, and it's. Yeah. I'm happy that a computer took your job away, because if a computer can do your job, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
A human being. I'm not sure. Sorry, that was Alexa. Device. I can't say the C word. Otherwise, Alexa will wake up. A computer will have to do it. What was I going to say? If a computer can do your job, you shouldn't be doing that job, because there's so much more you could be doing. There's so much more creative stuff you could be doing. I mean, the human brain is so amazingly plastic and can do all these amazing things. But if they're just sort of sitting there doing this sort of mind-numbing job that a machine can do, just let the machine do the job. And people should be happy that, you know, I don't have to do this drudgery anymore. Right. But you have to give people a path
to do something else.
Drudgery. I mean, I think that's what's not happening. It's like, what's happening is that, okay, you don't have to do the drudgery anymore, but you have no other option.
You have no other option, right?
Figure it out for yourself, right?
People are going on that extreme, which is not right, because at the end of the day, I mean, if we think about it, you know, even those people, the wizards, as we say, the people who are doing the software development or whatever, you know, you could upskill your people to learn how to do that. Because if it's logic based, right, then now you're starting to do that kind of stuff versus, I mean, factories, right? Factories, people doing the work, you know, it was done because, okay, not everybody's intellectual, blah, blah. We look at factories, people were doing, you know, the rote jobs, and they were, you know, putting the widget in, that's all they did all day long, right? They did that because they needed money, right? Everyone needs to have a job so that we can survive, blah, 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 blah. And so now you have wizards coming in and taking over that level first, right? Because you do have worker bees, but the worker bees are using the technology. It's an Uber model per se, right? Until autonomous vehicles come along. Mm-hmm. But, you know, but the thing is that we still need people to build the technology. So if we're changing education at all levels, right? Whether it's we start at schools to upskilling the people that are there because we're living longer, we're working longer, which means we have to make income for longer. It's now creating a world where we actually do need newer products and services, not because we're trying to add on to products and services, but we have to change the type of products and services that are needed by everybody, right? So yes, yep. the ability for the human mind to realize that, oh, we need new industries, you know, what is it? The one that they always talk about, the horse buggy whip,
Yes.
right? Because when the car came along, you had to switch over, right?
Yep.
So, but you wouldn't have thought about everything about cars until the cars came along and everything that goes around it, the tires, all the bells and whistles people put on a car or whatever, right? So I think new industries, new products, new services are going to come about because we're living that way. That's the ways of working for work. And we will just continue to build around it.
That's what's happened every time, right? Every time we have a new technology, no one can figure out what's going to happen. So people can see the job loss, but they can't see the new jobs. I mean, it's the same thing that happened with the internet. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're doing nowadays, like, didn't exist 20 years ago. I remember at one point I had a team of web developers. I'm like, web developers? I mean, there was no such thing as a web developer prior to like 1995, right? 1995, there wasn't such a thing as a web developer. All of a sudden, it became a career, right? And it's the same with autonomous vehicles. I know there's plenty of futurists out there who go, oh, it's gonna kill 2 million jobs, and here's how it's gonna do it. It's gonna, all the way from, Uber drivers down to insurance agents to, like gas station attendants, whatever. So yeah, but those 2 million or 2 billion or however many people said are going to find roles elsewhere doing other things, as long as we're able to. The new jobs will be created. We just don't know what those are yet, and that's happened every time throughout history, right?
Exactly. And I'm going to stop for you're skipping again, by the way.
Thanks for letting me know. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if it records that way for you, but
no, I can't hear it on my side, so
okay.
I'll just have to.
But I was actually going to take your web developer thing to another level, right? So we had the web developers, but think about it today. Most of us don't really need a full-on web developer to build out a website.
That's right.
We use Wix now.
Yeah. Web developers' time is come and gone, right?
And that was such a short period. And, those web developers have now evolved. They learned some type of coding and they're trying to probably do other stuff with it. Or, I'm sure, I mean, we do still have web developers maybe for bigger, larger companies, but most people don't need that anymore.
Well, what's happened is the job went from becoming all these different aspects in one role to splitting up to 100 different aspects and 100 different roles.
Yes.
So you got the web developer who went down the graphic design side, and you got the web developer who went down the code side, and you have the web developer who went down the IT admin side. So it's like the original webmaster. Remember webmasters?
Yeah.
Webmasters, the role of a webmaster was to do everything. So now a webmaster is like 1,000 different roles, and each one of those roles is turned into a different job. So anyone who used to be a webmaster can now say, okay, I am now a Unix sysadmin, or I'm a, like all the paths have exploded. And I think it's going to be the same for all of these. Exactly. All of these roles are going to go from a generic new role to, exploded.
Yeah. And we don't know what that is. And part of it we don't know that is because technology is allowing us to create things that weren't possible before, which our human mind hasn't really thought about. Again, the unintended consequences, right? Or even the consequences. I mean, and when I say consequence, I'm saying good or bad. I'm not saying that either is good or bad. But yes, you will continuously need, I believe that human beings will still need to be there to continue to create whatever new industries we continue to create. At the end of the day, humans are still, granted, when you look at it from an investor side, so that's the piece we haven't really talked about it, right? And we live right in the smack dab of Silicon Valley. Investors want their returns. So the question becomes, for companies to start thinking, is it worth it, right? Is the cost of investor money worth it? And in many cases, it will be. For us, we believe it is. We believe that there's going to be a cost for investors, but we also believe in the idea so much that we would rather it be able to spread quicker or faster versus trying to take the next 5 years to make,
I think there's some ideas that actually can be bootstrapped. Yes. Because they're fairly simplistic and then they take off and they're good. But There's others where you have to invest. Like if you think about life sciences or
Oh,
any
absolutely.
technologies or whatever. I mean, you can't, I can't bootstrap a life sciences company,
Nope.
unless I'm like Bloomberg or somebody like that, right? It's not, it's just not possible. Whereas if I wanted to jumpstart like a new Reddit clone, I could do that. I mean, if you go online right now, there's like 20 Reddit clones
Yeah.
on GitHub.
Yep. Well, and you bring up a good point about life sciences. Life sciences affect us by, this is our human bodies and human perspective, the biology and everything like that. And I do believe that even though we're living longer just because we're healthier in some ways, there's less plagues and so, well, we're
Except for the
dealing with our own.
coronavirus, right?
Right, exactly. But you know what I'm saying? It's
Mhm.
not like it used to be. The fact that in the Middle Ages so many women died of childbirth, right? We don't have that issue as much anymore. I mean, it's still there, but it's not like in the Middle Ages where populations were decreasing because of that. We're having population growths. We are using the world, but biologically, it's not like we've still found, the elixir of life or anything like that, but our life expectancy over the past 10 years has gone up,
Mhm.
and
Exactly.
it continues to grow up. Actually, somebody said a story the other day. They said their granddaughter was born a couple of weeks ago, and they were told that their granddaughter has a life expectancy of 102.
Wow. That's great.
Right? Because if you were born now, you could actually potentially live to about 100 or so. I believe that our generation will live to 100.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
I'm not even close to middle age yet, but I am in my
Well,
40s.
have Aubrey de Grey? He's a longevity researcher, and he
Okay.
said all we have to do is figure out how to live another 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
because within those 20 years, we'll figure out how to live another 20 years,
20.
and so on and so forth, and then
Exactly.
eventually we'll live forever. And then I'm like, that sounds great. I
Yeah.
want to do that. I
Right.
totally want to do that. And there's other people who say, are we sure we want to live that long? And it's kind of like I'm on the side of, let's at least try it,
Try
right?
it.
See if
Exactly.
we can. Like, don't put the kibosh on this thing yet, because we don't
Right.
even know if it's possible. So
Exactly. I
I'm on the
mean,
side of let's give it a shot.
let's give it a shot.
Yeah,
I
let's
agree
give it
with
a shot.
that. I'm all for that, and especially considering that you hear so many more stories of people celebrating 101 birthday or 102. And interestingly enough, I had someone in my network. Their dad was like 90 something years old. He was on all like telephone, computer. I mean, oh, sorry, cell phones, computer. He used all that, and it was like, yeah, you're. It's not necessary that your brain's gone either. It's not necessary that you're just a vegetable at 90 or
Yeah.
whatever, and you're living to 100 and being vegetable. No, people are still very much active. The whole ageism, right? Traditional corporate. I mean, both sides. There's ageism, right? The newer companies are saying, no, we only want young people. Although, corporations are saying, well, we want experience, but oh, by the way, if you're too experienced, sorry, you're too old now. And
And
it's
you're
like,
too expensive. Don't
you're
forget,
too
too
expensive,
expensive.
right? You're too expensive. Actually, that's probably a bigger reason. But then, you know what? I'm sorry, but these older people have been used to living and working a certain way and getting those, they worked towards that. That was the path. And now everything's blowing up in front of them and they're being like, what do I do now? But I
Yeah.
still want that lifestyle.